Namo Buddhaya. Homage to the Triple Gem, homage to Bada Bhante, Guru Bhante, and our most venerable Kevali Bhanteji here. Dear Upasakas and Upasikas and children, welcome back again. Did you have your lunch? So this is a question answer interaction session with ajahn. So now straight away we will start. Up to 1:15 we can have this interaction. Afterwards Bhante has to give time to our monks also. Then today afternoon we are going to Dhamma Meditation Center. So now we can start. So if you have a question, then Vajira will bring the microphone.
You want to ask or what? Any question? Yeah.
Vandami Banteji. In the Satipatthana Sutta, Samudaya Satcha Niddeso, Chakkuloke, Rupaloke, Chakku Vinyanam Loke, Sampassa Loke, Sampassaja Vedana Loke. Everywhere it is said, Piyarupam, Satarupam, Yette Satanaha, Uppajjamana Uppajjati, Nivisamana Nivisati, Pahiyamana Pahiyati. But it is said, but by experience, the mind gets always clinging to Apiyarupam. Mind gets clinging to negative. Wherever there is a displeasure, there the mind gets clinging. And why this is, I have not understood. This Apiyarupam is not put in Satipatthana Sutta, or I haven't properly got convinced from this Bhanteji. So just kindly put some light on this.
If you
Sadhu.
Sadhu, if you could first, maybe for those that aren't so skilled in Pali, translate the passage you just read out from the Satipatthana Sutta.
Chakkuloke.
Yeah.
You translate that in English for the benefit of people. In English, if you can tell that one.
Yes, Bhanteji.
Yeah.
The I, the world of I.
Yeah, the world of I.
Wherever there is pleasure, wherever there is enticing.
Yes.
So the I gets pleasure from the objects of the eye.
Yes.
The visual.
Yes.
In the same way, the ear, the sound.
Yes, right. And
the ear. And the nose, gandha, the smell.
And the tongue and the...
So wherever there is pleasure, the craving arises.
Yeah.
Tanaha.
Yes.
And by nature, we are lay people, our nature is to get clinging to whatever displeasure, something displeasure to the mind gets clinging to that. And anytime, every time, the same thing keeps on the records keep playing. And that is Apiyarupam, that is displeasure to us.
Yes.
But in the Satipatthana, wherever there is enticing, that clinging starts, it is said. But our own experience, the mind gets always clinging to such displeasure, such things only. So I felt I have to ask this question to Bhanteji so that how I have not get convinced with what Bhagavan Buddha has said. So kindly throw some light on this, Bhanteji.
Okay. With your permission, I'd like to explain from how I understand it, but I am not a scholar and I haven't analyzed the problem in depth. But I would say craving arises both from pleasure and displeasure. And it's very important to see particularly that we get carried away and have clinging, that means attachment or grasping at things that we like. And I think the emphasis is on piya rupa, satta rupa, and things like pleasant, endearing that we get through the eye, ear, nose, body, tongue, and mind, because most people are not aware that this is addictive, you can say, yeah? So the clinging means it's addictive, careful. So looking at sights, looking at pleasant sights is also dukkha in disguise. It's like a sugar-coated poisonous pill, if you want to exaggerate the meaning. So I believe the Buddha maybe pointed out particularly the pleasant contact with the sense bases in order to warn people, because usually people think it's a good thing if we see something nice and endearing and pleasant. But like you may know the Dhammapada verse that from pleasure arises dukkha as well. So of course, when something unpleasant arises, for example, an unpleasant smell, people will immediately understand this is dukkha, because nobody likes unpleasant smells or like unpleasant sights. For example, if there was a big stain of some kind of like say animal leaving some stain on a white sofa or on the freshly painted wall, everybody would immediately find that that's ugly and find dukkha arising. But if you see a nicely painted yellow ceiling, for example, nobody would see dukkha in there. So I believe that the Buddha had to point it out especially. I think it's many times what we are experiencing in daily life is that we kind of take for granted that things are nice and pleasant. And then, for example, why do people create music, beautiful music? Because more or less the ear enjoys the sounds. And it is one of the special features of the Buddha's teachings that he also pointed out, even in the beautiful things, there is unsatisfactoriness. The link is because, like with good food, for example, once we've eaten, we want more. And then we make a habit out of it, or we get even addicted to. So this movement towards not only liking it, but wanting to have it, this is like caused by, the contact with these things. Like, for example, you go to a movie and you're completely captured by the movie. And I heard that most of the Indian movies are actually about music. But there's much more music than than nice visions. A lot of good music for people, and they don't even know that they're enslaved to it. They get caught up by it. So with Satipatthana, you're able to more or less lift yourself in a higher perspective and see, okay, this is happening to the eye, the ear, the nose, and the tongue, the body, and the mind, and you can see arising and ceasing, and you can see that these processes are just conditioned by the contact and by the natural process. Of course, the body being designed as a human being, let's say as an animal, we have to enjoy, for example, contact. Like, for example, when we hug somebody, we do this because it's inbuilt into our genes and into the way the body is programmed, that we love contact. And for example, embracing somebody, or even other things that monks don't talk about. This is ingrained by the animal nature of the human body. But with awareness and with the practice of Satipatthana, we can see these things just simply happening. And the dangerous one, for my understanding, is the ones that everybody agree are pleasant and beautiful. For example, music in the Christian church, it is meant to be beautiful and glorifying the God in that sense. And people always think music is a good thing. And for example, my mother many times asks, why don't you have music in Buddhism? For example, the 8th precept, we say Nacha Gita, yeah, don't sing and dance, yeah. And it's just because it's overwhelming when you live a meditative life where you try to be aware of everything that arises and ceases. Then it's very overwhelming when something beautiful comes. And the unbeautiful, you don't have to worry about too much. People don't like it. They won't indulge in the unbeautiful unless there's some kind of psychological disorder maybe, but usually people don't. Maybe they do sometimes. For example, when there's sorrow, pain, grief, and despair after somebody has died. I know for some cultures there is a real indulgence, I would say, please forgive me, but like into mourning and weeping and crying. And then the sadder the music, the more people like it, because it's kind of like it feels touching them. So the wise way to deal with these is just to step back a little bit and see these are conditioned phenomena. For example, the body is built in such a way, I say to the monks many times, that people like food. It has to be like that, otherwise nobody would eat anymore. So it's, or like humanity has to be programmed to like contact, like between two people, partners, for example. It has to be programmed like that. But as Buddhists and practitioners of Satipatthana, we want to attain to peace, and we want to have the stilling of the urge to have more and more. And so that's why I believe the Buddha included these particularly the piya, the endearing and enticing, you can say, enticing part. Does that make sense?
Yes, Banteji.
Okay. And what I mentioned this morning about making a religious ceremony beautiful is not so much about the color of the flowers or the sound of the chanting. For example, if the chanting is not very beautiful, it still expresses the devotion and it still uplifts through the activity, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And so that's why we then take the emotion behind it as the uplifting factor. But also we don't get addicted to it. We know actually sometimes we have beautiful settings and sometimes we have unbeautiful settings. For example, going to the Maha Bodhi Society last week, almost everybody that goes there is touched by the atmosphere there, and not only the abstract fact that the Lord Buddha was enlightened there, that wouldn't mean much to people from other religions. I've seen brothers and sisters from the Islam, for example, come there, and they're also touched by the beauty of it and the serenity and the atmosphere. But actually, the deeper meaning comes from when we sit down, close our eyes, and reflect about what has actually happened there. And when people come to the Maha Bodhi Society and then they feel, my practice goes very well there, you have to be careful. Maybe it's just because of the good atmosphere. And one should actually be able to practice similarly when you're sitting maybe at the side of a road, or sitting in your car at a traffic jam, and maybe the air conditioner doesn't work, you have to open the windows, there's smells and everything, noises, and maybe some cow walks past and puts her head through your window. You have to also be peaceful then. Yeah. Not only when you're sitting under the Bodhi tree.
Namaste, Bantaji. Unknowingly, I'm asking this question. Where does our self-worth come from? Where does our self-worth come from?
Self-worth. Self-worth comes from being honest and being honest, I would say. If you are not honest, then somehow you feel not worthy. But if you are very true and respectful, and you take a sense of pride in being truthful and are fully aware of what is appropriate and what is good in that moment, you feel uplifted, you feel worthy, you feel you have a good opportunity in your life. Whereas if you are not 100% truthful and there's like doubts about the actions by body, speech and mind, or you're doing something, like I said this morning, a little bit automatic, you feel you're not really growing with it, you're not really putting in your heart into these things. Whereas if you're truthful and you're careful about not deviating from this real acceptance of the way things are really, then one is deceiving oneself a little bit. For example, we compromise and then we don't feel worthy because there's some kind of doubt that comes up. freedom from doubt, and being truthful. I would say the Buddha gave the famous qualities of a sappurisa, somebody who is like really truthful. He knows the Dhamma, basically he knows the law of how things works, and how nature works. For example, you can say nature in terms of the three characteristics, but you can also say nature in terms of psychology or physics, chemistry, and so forth, biology. Somebody who knows the Dhamma, basically. Okay. And then, somebody who does things with a purpose, somebody who knows why am I doing this. For example, not just automatically driving your car without thinking and then missing the right turn, or like giving stock phrases when somebody talks with you and you just say something silly or like something not meaningful, so that you do things purposeful, that you have a meaning with the things that you do. The next quality of a true man, true person, is then to know to know oneself, to know yourself, like atanyuta, like knowing in which situation am I, what is my life about, how am I dealing with my five khandhas, how am I dealing with my feelings and so forth. This is atanyuta, knowing yourself. And this is very important for self-esteem, to know realistically what is my life about. For example, in my conditioning, I've been brought up in Germany. Many habits I have from coming from this upbringing, it becomes a part of my atta, of myself. And I've been born as a male, basically, and many things I might see like through some male perspective. Maybe a woman would see it differently. So just to simply know yourself in that sense, it's already realistically understanding yourself in one way, and from this maybe one becomes more skillful with dealing with oneself. Then also knowing moderation, to be not giving way to the impulses like the greed, for example. That's called matanyuta, where you know, actually, for example, when you hear a pleasant song, you know the song is going to end, and you don't put on replay all the time. Or like, when the time is, for example, you want to do something, but your children are waiting at home, and then you say, okay, it's enough, and you go back and dedicate some time to your duties, for example. This is matanyuta. And then there's the knowing about the context. For example, the situation of other people. You can see how other people are conditioned. For example, I know I'm now in India. People in India have a certain lifestyle and they have certain customs. I know the conventions, and then I feel in touch with a person that talks about certain personal problems with me. I can understand. So it's pukalanyuta, knowing people, and then the other one is knowing society, knowing the group. So, for example, we're now in a monastery. We have got monks here. Monks like to be quiet, so don't knock on their doors and disturb them or so, or like treat them with a sense of distance. These are like knowing the society you're in. If you were in a mosque, for example, you'd have certain rules about it, or if you were in a school, for example, you'd treat the children differently than the group of teachers. And this is a way of knowing what to do at the right time. And this is like somebody who's really true to these principles, to these factors, then will be able to adapt to that situation, and that feels you're in harmony, and that brings self-esteem. And I forgot the one factor is the right time, kalanyuta, somebody who knows at the time what to do at the right time. All these factors of a sappurisa, somebody who's a true person, will have a sense of integrity, a sense of being in the right place, and being in the right place, being in harmony, and being honest about it, and looking at these factors will give rise to a sense of well-being, a sense of harmony, and a sense of self-respect, I would say.
Thank you so much, Banteji. That's so wonderful about this life I'm talking. This is all real about this,
This, right,
what you're
exactly.
trying to
All,
so, okay,
exactly.
I'm convinced with your answer.
Yeah.
But think a little beyond this life.
Yeah.
What about self-worth, about high, or if I go a little further, as soul, where does it come from?
About the next life, or the past life? Is that you're asking about? Like, how,
Basically, where does it come from?
where does it come
Whether
from?
it's right now I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Presently, I'm sitting here. Before that, I might have crossed many lives.
Yeah.
I might have crossed many lives. I'm talking about where does it come from? The very beginning I'm talking about. Because I'm unlowing a matter about this.
Okay.
Wonderful. Your answer was wonderful about the present scenario.
So, I believe I don't have any special knowledges about past lives, and I also don't have any special knowledges about future life, but I believe that the Buddha had these knowledges. It's very well described in the suttas. And so I believe that there is a logic to you becoming who you are right now. So when you trace back causes and conditions that made you become who you are right now in this situation, with all the good and bad and all the things you like and don't like, and all your social context and so forth, I believe every single bit has a reason. This we call, it may be your karma vipaka, that you have ended up right now at this moment. At the same time, then you can, through your volitional actions, by body, speech and mind, determine in which direction the future will go. But there will always be some things from the past that still determine the process, because it's not just one process, it's many processes, and they're overlapping. So in one way, if you were to completely decipher or find out why you're exactly what you are right now, I think you'd need a supercomputer, which so far they haven't built. And I think the Buddha would say your head would burst. But what's important is that you have a sense of cause and effect. And the Buddha actually never taught about the primary cause. He said samsara, or the round of causes and conditions, is amatakang. I don't know the full Pali word. Anamatang. Anamatako sangsaro. And so the samsara is not calculable, you can say. But it has a cause. Every single step has a cause and effect. And if you meet people that may have the apinyas or the vicha, the special knowledges in being able to immerse their mind into jhana and then going back into the past, they may be able to single out a certain causes and conditions that are usually obstructed by our everyday way of thinking. They go so deep that they see the subtleties of this process, and they may be able to remember past lives. This is what we understand was one of the special knowledges that the Buddha attained to under the Bodhi tree. And it said that he didn't just remember one life, but countless lives. But yet he never said, what's the primary cause? And he actually said, in this round of samsara, it is so vast, so big, that you wouldn't be able to find out this primary cause. And also he said it's not useful, because you need to know the principle of cause and effect so you can properly conduct yourself right now, not to do things that will lead to something unwholesome or something that doesn't give you good opportunities, like, for example, breach of 5 precepts. Then we believe in the law of cause and effect, or in the law of karma. Basically, if you intentionally violate those, then this will be one of the factors that pulls you down. And then in the future, you might not have the full human capacity in this life already sometimes, but also what happens when somebody is at the end of their life, they still have so many open karmic processes. For the average person, not the enlightened ones, but the average person, so many karmic processes that are still open. This energy doesn't just stop. It just continues. And this is something that the Buddha was very clear about, that after this life, then the energy finds another situation that is perfectly matching your karmic dispositions, and then you will more or less become another individual according to those conditions. There's no direct memory of it unless you are practicing so deep that you can enter jhana and get this pupe nivasanusati jhana, the recollection of past lives. but for the normal people, that's not possible, and it's also not necessary. There's many disciples of the Buddha that attain full awakening just accepting the principle. There's cause and condition. There is karma, and there's the ending of karma. And the ending of karma is if you develop your awareness such that you are not prone to making volitional choices anymore. You're not making new karma. Does that make sense? It's a very complex question. You can have a whole weekend seminar. Maybe leave it up to the experts, but did I answer the question properly? Maybe to summarize, we are the product of many processes, and it's important to believe in cause and conditions. Nothing comes randomly. It's not that suddenly there's this super galactic impulse that makes you happy or sad. It's all because of some reason. There must be some reason. And if you believe that there must be some reason with what you get now, then you put in the right causes for the future to not be doing silly, unsensical things. Okay.
Vandami Banteji, I've got a question.
Yes.
Here. So I've been reading about Ajahn Mun for quite some time. Then the disciples Ajahn Cha, Ajahn Maha Bodhi, Ajahn Tate, all these little I read.
Yes.
So in this tradition, Ajahn Cha's traditions you are in. So giving up all the material life, you have taken up this hard work as a monk. What inspired you to take up this? And what are the little trainings what you have undergone there, which will transform us? Because it needs strict discipline. Strict discipline. So without that, we can't get away with all the conditions what we were submerged in. So little light on that will inspire us. Thanks a lot.
I think I was inspired by the wise attitude of the monks I met. I didn't meet Luang Pu Man, obviously. He was dead already a long time before I was born. And Venerable Ajahn Chah had also passed away before I became a monk. And who I met was the Sangha of these Ajahns. And I found, even though they're not as perfect as their own teachers, for example, Luang Pu Man is very special, I believe, and also Luang Por Chah, everybody was still trying to emulate these teachers. And this sense of training and what we call sikkha, where people are putting in the effort, I found very inspiring. And the fact that it is difficult, yes, it is difficult, but to pass an university exam is also difficult. Or to become a good husband is also very difficult. Or to earn enough money is also difficult. So it's nothing that's not difficult. But for me, it was important that it's done for the right meaning, for the right purpose, and for the sake of the Dhamma. And I felt the way our teachers in the Sangha deal with difficulties is very wise. For example, when you think about the teachings of the Lord Buddha emphasizing the Four Noble Truths, he very clearly says, dukkha should be understood, should be met, should be faced. What many times I was doing before in my life is like running away from dukkha. And then, so coming to the Sangha, I felt, okay, there's dukkha everywhere, but these people are looking at it, and they're trying to find out how does dukkha arise and how does it cease. So if you have faith in this idea of like not running away from things but facing the trouble, then it's not too hard. And the discipline is also something that is carried by a group of people. It's not just a single effort. If I was alone, I probably wouldn't, like the Bodhisattva, he's exemplary in that sense that he had no teachers, no Sangha, and no models. He just basically found the way by himself. Whereas like we are fortunate, we have this template, we have a model, we have a system. So I also found the system of training very, very inspiring. Also the Vinaya, to me, even though it's all about rules and prohibitions and allowances, and I never studied law before, I found it inspiring that something detailed can guide your life, because sometimes it's easier if you just make a rule about things, and as a private person it's difficult to find rules for yourself. For example, to say, I'll go to bed every night at 9 o'clock and I wake up at 3. It's very difficult if you're alone, but if you have a culture that supports these rules, it becomes fairly easy. I was asking Bhanteji just now, like a while ago, whether the samaneras here find it difficult to eat until noon only. And he said no, because they're used to it. And also everybody does it. Think about a football game or cricket game. I'm not fully aware of the culture of India yet, but I believe you don't play football so much, but you play cricket. Cricket is so complicated, and there's so many rules. Would the cricket players complain about the rules, or would they complain about the hours they have to put into being fit enough to play this game? So. And this, like the Dhamma Vinaya or the Vinaya in the Sangha, is not a game. It's about like meaningful things, and it's been designed by the fully awakened Buddha, and we treat it with a special respect, and that gives power. If you think so many things the Blessed One has warned us of, and I feel honored to be warned by the Blessed One, by the teacher. In many areas. Of course, I'm also somehow blind. I don't see everything. But the culture of supporting each other and giving each other the necessary tools to understand how to lead one's life skillful, I found it actually much easier than living out in the world where there's so many unwritten rules, and there's so many unwritten things where you are somehow struggling and not supportive in many ways. Having said that, I had a very happy lay life. I didn't feel too much suffering, but I felt what I meet in the Sangha, even though it's challenging, it's worth it. Let's put it like that.
Ali, there.
Namo Buddhaya. So, I have read some books of Ajahn, Venerable Ajahn. He used to teach from day-to-day life incidents.
Yes.
And he has a lot of sense of humor.
Yes.
And whenever he wanted to teach a principle, he used to crack a joke and then he will teach, so that it will be absorbed very deeply, and they used to change their attitude.
Yeah.
So I recall one incident of detachment. So once monks were attending an electrical work. So they touched the electricity, it got shock. And the monks withdrew their hand, and Ajahn cracked a joke. Why are you withdrawing? Why are you withdrawing? I am teaching detachment for a long time. You are not learning. Now you are suddenly detaching yourself. Hold on to it. So this was from this joke he taught a very highly spiritual technique of detachment, Manteji. So therefore, can you tell some techniques to detach from how to detach?
Like what
mentally, not physically. Physically we may detach, but mentally we have attached to so many things. How to come out of these detachments one by one, Bhanteji?
Sadhu.
Thank you, Bhanteji. Thank you, Bhanteji.
I think you've just mentioned one of them. One of them is humor. But what humor means is that you're putting yourself in a kind of different state of mind. You're not taking yourself so serious. So if you have self-humor and then you're able to laugh about yourself, and you're that relaxed, not in a heedless way, but in a way of like, I'm doing the same problem again. I should, be able to laugh about yourself in a good way, in a charming way, or make sure that when you approach other people, that you're also not taking them so dead serious, but like in a light way. And I think that's we can do that. Like, for example, if you are helping out to nurse a very old person, and the family is very stressed out, and everybody is suffering because they don't know how it's going to end, and how how the life, you can't save the life of the sick person anymore, but like you're trying to comfort them. What I found is if you're able to make a nice, beautiful, little humorous comment about it, or even the sick person themselves has the capacity to smile a bit about what they're going through. I think that's a bit like the same technique as Ajahn Chah used. Then you put yourself in a different position and you see yourself from the outside and say, "Oh, it's actually ridiculous what I'm doing here. My attachments are too earnest, too strict." And I think this is one thing I also witnessed from a lot of the old generation of senior disciples of Longpo Man, for example, just talking with Venerable Ananda Bhante about his time at Ajahn Maha Bodhi's in Wat Bhavantat. He's got a very fierce reputation and very strict and like draconian practices, like where you basically feel you can't do them, and he's asking even more than that. But when you approach him and you come there wholeheartedly, and before you meet him, you kind of like smile about yourself a little bit because you're so tight and uptight. I think what you get from Lungta Mahabua or from other senior fierce ajahn is only metta, and many times he actually cracks a joke. For example, we had one monk who had serious illness and chronic illness and was in quite a lot of despair, and it meant a lot of him to pay respects to Lungta Mahabua, and we were paying respects then, and I was like his mentor and I was trying to coach everything. The whole situation was a bit tense, and I just thought, this is funny how we're making so much dukkha around ourselves. And then and the monk that was like with a chronic illness, who wanted some real advice, Lungta Mahabua said, "Oh, you got a tattoo. And this tattoo, the Western monks also tattoo themselves, and the Thai monks tattoo themselves. You're attached to your body. You want to embellish this body. It's just joking about the tattoo." And I found that so relaxing, and it was just a skillful means of bonding and not taking it so serious. And this monk lit up. Basically, he felt, "Oh, the teacher loves me as well. He's just like charming to me." And so we never had this feeling that the senior monk is actually hard on us. We always have the feeling there is metta, and metta is like sometimes expressed in some cheering up comments. It's not sarcastic jokes, it's not bad jokes, it's just making other people smile and see the situation a little bit more.
Vande. Is arahantship possible without attainment of samadhi and teacher?
Samadhi and vicha.
Teacher.
Teacher.
Without attainment of samadhi and teacher, arahantship possible?
Oh, the question is, do you need a teacher for attaining arahantship? And do you need samadhi for arahantship? Is that the question?
He is saying, is arahantship possible without a teacher and a samadhi?
Oh, without a teacher and a samadhi. Okay. I believe the whole Noble Eightfold Path has to be present. And this is not my personal experience. I think that's very much directly out of the suttas. So I believe like you do need the whole Noble Eightfold Path coming together. What level of samadhi is a different question, but it is one of the ingredients for sure. It's like whether it's like to which level of samadhi I wouldn't dare to express an opinion because my personal experience isn't that high. But like I believe like it's like the Buddha taught, like the Noble Eightfold Path, walking and having the whole path come together, then that's the vehicle for arahantship. But the question about a teacher, if you don't have a teacher, I believe the Buddha had no teacher, but it's a terribly long path. So I believe we're privileged if we have teachers and people that we look up to, who can give us guidance, and we can then progress, maybe in a direct way. But you need to also be very clear about what the teacher says and not be deluded about this. Like if you're in a situation where you deify the teacher and say the teacher is infallible, and you basically not trusting your own judgment anymore. You're also possibly blocking some insights, because it's not that through the teacher's wisdom you can attain. It has to be your own wisdom. At some point you have to make the teacher's teachings your own teaching. So I believe it's the fastest way, comparing it to the Buddha and the Bodhisattva on the long path of building up Barami. Now we are fortunate that there's a lot of teachings and a lot of guidelines around, and I believe the Buddha himself more or less praised the giving each other guidance, giving mentorship, and he allowed the monks to revere many other arahants. So I believe there is a lot of purpose in having a teacher or having teachings. It can also be different teachers, but one has to be careful not to just simply shop around without committing oneself. But it's a very important ingredient, I would say. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
And Buddha onwards, the traditions are continuing, like Nigantanas, Charvakas. So what is the difference between the Jains, Arihants and Buddhist Arahant?
I'm also maybe not 100% educated in the contents of the Jain practices. I believe that there's many suttas where the Buddha talks about what the difference is, because the Buddha in many discourses had conversations with adherents of Nigantanata Buddha or Mahaviro, the way the Jain, the founder of the Jains, is called in the suttas. And one of the differences is I believe that the Buddha had a much more emphasis on the middle way, and and saw quite a lot of danger in adhering to the power of rituals. For example, the idea to burn away old karma through merely taking on what they translate as the rod or the danda, the practices of hardships. The Buddha, I think, was quite clear about that. This is not the middle way, and he had his awakening was the finding of the middle way between Atakilamatanu yoga, tormenting oneself, and Kamasukalikanu yoga, which is indulgent in sensual pleasures. And of course, the Jain religion is not indulging in sensual pleasures, but maybe in the eyes of the Lord Buddha, the Nigantanata Buddha was too stern on the tapasi, on the very austere practices. But I'm not an expert, and I don't want to pass judgment, because I have never had the fortune to meet any Jain ascetics, and it would be interesting to see how the Jain side sees the teachings of the Lord Buddha, and also whether the teachings have been possibly represented correctly or not. I can't judge, I can't know. But I think the emphasis of the Buddha is the middle way, neither of these extremes, and he gave up the extreme practices, which weren't the practices of the Jain ascetics. But what I read from the suttas that the Jain followers at the time of the Buddha were practicing, it seemed like too extreme and too mechanical. It's like through the mere action, so to say, you get purified, or through burning away old karma. Then the Buddha emphasized karma is intention. So for him, for example, one of the practices that comes up very often when we are living in a forest monastery for us is that we need to sweep the road, and we need to sweep the path, and we need to walk through the forest, and inevitably we will tread on an ant, or will tread on even a bigger animal sometimes. Out of mindlessness we destroy life, and or we brush away a mosquito, we kill the mosquito, or we open our mouth and we breathe, and an insect dies. The Buddha would completely say, no problem, there was no intention, there is no karma vipaka coming from this. And whereas I believe that the Jain ascetics are much more strict in preventing the taking of life. Whereas the Buddha said karma is intention, and you have to very much watch your mind when you do actions by body and speech. How the mind is inclined, this will determine the results. If you completely wholesome in your intentions, for example, you're sweeping the path and you brush away insects, but one of the insects dies, one of the ants, for example, while you're sweeping, your good intention is to keep the monastery clean, make the path safe, and there was no thought of killing even while you were doing this action. Or when you're driving in a car and the insects crush the against the windshield. There's a famous sutta, I believe, when the Buddha saw the insects flying to an oil lamp while in the dark, and they put up an oil lamp and there's many insects flying into the light. And the Buddha reflected, oh, how cruel is samsara. Many beings, driven by ignorance, fly to the light and die. And he didn't say, you have to turn off the light because so many insects will die. This is not saying that the Buddha wanted these insects to die, of course not. But he was using it to a wisdom reflection rather than thinking by changing the causes and conditions, I'll be able to save the lives. He said basically, the idea is every human being or every being is responsible for their actions. And cetana and the intention behind the action is the main ingredient that determines what the results of these actions are.
So I have been a direct beneficiary of mindfulness practice and meditation and all that. And my question here is, I would like to know if there is a best way. I'd like to know if there is a best way to share the best practices or share the benefits with my friends and relatives and family. So whenever I share the benefits and all that, they look at me in a different way. Okay, why is he into all this? Now he's just 35 or 36. Why is he into all this right now? So they always look at me slightly differently. So I would like to know if there is a best way to share the benefits, because I had a anger issue and all that. But right now, after this practice, after learning how to do the practice, at least I know only probably 1 or 2%. But even with that, I have been able to manage well. So thanks to the teachings. So yeah, I just wanted to ask this. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very important question. And one thing is that, again, the principle is we cannot really force an insight on somebody else. And it's very important. There's no thing as a Buddhist missioner in that sense that he will be able to convert people to Buddhism. So that would be one extreme, because it's not a belief religion, it's an experiential religion where it relies on everybody's insight. And you cannot tell somebody, please be wise. Why? Well, be wise now, or so. You can't. And all you can do is offer an example. And sometimes we are a bit ahead of ourselves. Maybe it takes time for other people, because the process of adapting to renounce bad habits or even to be simply ethical is like the process to better one's life is very, very, very painful for some people. They're stuck in certain habits and so forth. And sometimes good advice comes at the wrong time. So we need to be patient and sometimes maybe lower our expectations. For example, if I go back to Germany, secular society, not much understanding of the law of karma or rebirth. And so I have to be very skillful and find bridges. One bridge that one can easily find towards other beliefs or other people that don't believe anything even is through metta bhavana. If you come with a heart of goodwill, not with some pushy agenda, but like with a heart of patience and goodwill, and just let them experience, just wait. I believe that good input sometimes takes some time, and there's no master trick how to get people to understand. It's just like in school, you can't. If somebody, for example, somebody's afraid of solving a mathematical problem, like many students are, they shy away. As soon as the teacher asks the question, they freeze, and so the teacher can say, "Don't be stupid, solve this." It doesn't work. You have to just wait till they cool down and they find it interesting or so. That's probably all I can say. And I think we have almost time for the next session with the monks. They also deserve some Q&A.
Namo Buddhaya, Bhante.
Okay, last one.
Last question. Welcome to India, Venerable Ajahn.
Yes.
This is the land of Dhamma. And I would like to express much gratitude for Maha Bodhi Society for making this possible for all the lay devotees to come in contact and learn Dhamma and be part of this kind of meaningful discussion and to learn something out of it. Coming to my question, Ajahn, what contributes a greater country to suffer in a massive manner? For example, my country, India, suffers with huge inequality, and any countries, for example, recently a lot of wars are happening in the world. And those kids, those people doing no mistake, they are going to suffer in an immense manner. So this is a reason how whole country is done some bad karma so that it is going through? Or is there any specific reason as per Buddha's words, if you can reflect upon? Thank you.
Yeah. This I can only answer in the way I personally understand it, is there's I imagine that each human being gets born into exactly the condition that is appropriate for the karmic as karma vipaka for each person. So, for example, for some reason, myself. I would like to not answer this in terms of collective karma as like a whole country, so to say. It's a way of speaking. It's the karma of, so to say, the Tibetans or the karma of this and that country. I don't believe in that this is naturally a kind of like a good way of seeing it. I come rather from an individual perspective. For example, thinking about myself. I had the misfortune not to be born in India or in Thailand, in a Buddhist country or in a country with Dhamma. But for some reason, I had some other positive karma that I was able to find access to it. And it's not that everybody in Germany or so is unfortunate in that sense, or like in countries where there's no Dhamma at all. For example, some countries in Africa, there's very little exposure. And at least in a personal way, I would say there must be a reason for myself that I wasn't born in a perfect situation, so to say. And I take it from that, and in extension to that, without judging or like blaming anybody, I would say each and every person gets born into exactly the right conditions. Even with parents, for example, when the general view of the Western society is basically I've got the rights to better parents than I have. And they protest against their parents somehow, but like actually through the Buddha's teachings, I came to terms with my parents were exactly the right parents for me. Thinking about how karma works and how causes and conditions overlap. At that point of my personal, say karma vipaka, this was the condition that is exactly right. So generally I think that the world is in such a difficult state right now with so many wars and inequality, not particularly looking at India or now and maybe Gaza and Israel. I'm not particularly singling out something. I think all over the world there is like an abundance of craving for sensual things, craving for material things, and there's a lack of spiritual qualities, and it seems to be like a pandemic, so to say, that everywhere people worship the self, the atta, and there's nothing bigger than one's personal self for people these days. So this is really bad development, and we are experiencing something where so many people are living in bad conditions because the views and the disposition towards Dhamma altogether is not very positive anymore. Yet there are countries that still have the roots. For example, I believe India and I believe Thailand. There's so much possibility there. But how come that some people get born in more conducive situations and less conducive situations? I can only say is an individual process. Yet there is a world culture that I feel is in decline right now, honestly. We can just look at the planet and the environmental problems, almost impossible to solve. Yet I do believe if we still do good actions and we practice the Dhamma, we won't suffer. And we'll be able to raise ourselves in a state of being or state of mind that won't suffer, even if the world is on fire. Basically, we have to aspire to be ourselves not affected from the fire. If you understand, like the conditions that are unfavorable. If one reflects about the complexity of problems right now. And it brings yourself a sense of urgency, a sense of samvega, a sense of dispassion with sensual things, with material things, and brings you back to the urge to practice a spiritual life or Dhamma life. Then you can even say unfavorable conditions have triggered you to see the danger in samsara and the wish to break out of it and work hard on yourself. So at the end of the day, to say good or bad really again depends on how you manage your mental energies and how you get inspired to do better. So this would be my answer. And it's an individual process, not a collective one.
Thank you so much, Ajahn, for this interaction with these questions and answers. Lot of questions, but less time. We have to conclude here because Ajahn has next program. Please keep in touch with the Dhamma practice, listen to Dhamma Discourses, and one of the questions online was somebody was asking if they can come for 10 days to practice to Achahn's monastery. It came online.
There's so many monasteries around the world, even in India I hear there's so many. So if you want a very easy access, come to the Maha Bodhi Society in India next door and practice wholeheartedly. But of course, like any other monastery, for example, Wat Bananachat is always open. So, but it's more complicated to get to Thailand.
Thank you, Banteji. Illige Muktaya Modern Ma. Shall we conclude here? Are you happy? Yes. So we are very grateful to Ajahn once again. On behalf of all the monks, monastic community and all the lay people, they are all our supporters. They are all our upasakas and upasikas supporting Maha Bodhi. Some of them are for long time, many years. Some of them are, most of them are 10 years, 20 years like that, 5 years. So you are always welcome. Make best use of these opportunities. May all the blessings of Triple Gem be with all of you, and may you keep progressing on the path of Dhamma.